Hi, everybody. I'm going to give over my story. I mentioned maybe some videos ago a little bit of my journey, of my story, but I'm going to break them down now into 6 chapters. There may be more, but I'm going to say 6 for now. I'm going to call it Trust Falling into God. I'm going to give you the breakdown of beginning parts of my version of my story growing up as a modern Orthodox Jewish boy up until now, literally giving it all up and finding that I had to leave my religion completely, and leave the old world, leave the old circumstances. So the first step is to tell you about my upbringing. I was born into a modern Orthodox Jewish family. So for those of you who don't know, people know Judaism based on what they see. So they see the guys with the yarmulkes on their head, with the little beanie, or you see the women covering their hair with the skirts and the covering their arms, and you see guys wearing the white shirts and the black pants. That's part of my journey, but that's not the beginning of my journey. Actually, the beginning of my journey, I grew up actually kind of looking like this, but with a yarmulke on my head, and I had to have side curls. Well, they weren't curled up, but they were sideburns up to here. They had to be up to the bone. So there were certain rules that we had to follow by. We kept Sabbath, we kept kosher. There were certain things that there were rules or confinements. We went to private modern Orthodox day school. So you went from school basically from 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock at night. You were learning both English studies and you were learning Judaic studies. But you had to wear the garb, like there was a four-corner garment with strings called tzitzis. You had to wear that. You had to abide by you couldn't eat non-kosher, you couldn't eat meat and milk together. You had to keep all the high holidays and the regular holidays, Passover, and 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 again, all of that different holidays. I could go into the intricacies, but when you grow up in that world, you grow up. It's a bit confusing because you're modern in the sense that you look like a regular guy, you look like everybody else in the world, but you're wearing a yarmulke, so that separates you. And you have these rules, and you're told you're the chosen ones. That means you're chosen, you're the favorite, and that everyone else is not, and you're better than everybody else. And it's not. It's what it is. In the world that I grew up in, you are literally better than everyone else. You are on a pedestal, and everyone else is on this regular level, if not on a lower level, and that you're going to go to this place called Olam Haba, this place called heaven, this futuristic place. Like you're collecting these things called mitzvos, points, whether good deeds that you're supposed to do, and the more good deeds you do, the more you're going to get this place in the future called Olam Haba, this heaven place. And it's a very confusing place to be because you're on the one hand, growing up in this modern world, you're like torn because you're not told you have to keep everything. There are certain things you just don't have to do. And you know that in the religion, it says like there's all these rules that you're not keeping that everyone's cool with. And in the modern world, there's like differentiations. Like some people follow certain rules, some people don't. And so you go to different people's homes and you see like everyone has their version of what their modern orthodoxy is, what their version of Judaism is. And it seems like it was very different. And some kids could just go along with the path. They just go along with that version of the story. And I was the type of kid that would question a lot of things, even if I never said things outwardly. I was always questioning things inside, like I didn't understand it. And I had this fear of like, if I broke certain rules, like I would get into trouble. I'll never forget when I got into high school, I made a couple friends who guided me to break the Sabbath, turn on lights, go on the computer, sneak into cars, things of that nature. So, in this modern Orthodoxy world, in this confusing state of being, in the schools, you have kids that are all kinds of kids. Some kids are not keeping anything. Some kids are keeping extra, and everyone's in the same environment, but everyone is acting a little bit different, and based on their parents and based on what their parents tell them. Now, I also grew up in an environment where you were told you have to marry a Jew. You cannot marry anybody else. You really couldn't be friends with anybody outside of the Jewish community. I mean, you were kept in a box, insular, so that way you're it's kind of incestual, right? You're all mingling amongst each other, and you're staying within a certain confine, and then and you only know your people. You view as your people and others that are separate from you. And when you're a person who, especially at a young age, who is feeling this God energy, seeking out this God energy, you're trying to figure out how this works for you. So at some point, you're like, is God real? What is God? Because is God the fear of other people knowing what you're doing? It seems to be that the way I grew up, it was like this fear of other people knowing what you're doing, but privately you could do whatever you want because nobody knows, and that's okay. As long as nobody knows what you're doing, that was okay. But outwardly, well, you'd go on vacations, and all kinds of families were different. So some families would eat French fries, non-kosher French fries, and that were, of course, mixed together with the oils of all the other foods. So if you learned about Judaism, you start to learn that, like, once you're eating non-kosher, that are hot non-kosher foods are all mixed together, and you're probably eating pork, or you're probably eating milk and meat and milk together, but people think they're not, because they want to rationalize it. No, it's not really. But it's so funny because, like, I started to learn some things. I started to get a little more educated as time went on about it. But up until, I would say, from 0 to 18, I was in this confusing state of being of, like, you don't know who you're supposed to be because you're really pretending to be somebody for the world. And they're literally, it's like a community of people telling you, yes, just pretend for everybody else that you're a certain way. So therefore, you could be accepted into this community. Therefore, you could be accepted into marrying into a Jewish family that will take you in. And that was my initial upbringing of religion, of God, this confusing state of being, and which lended itself that after you finish high school, many people in this world go to Israel for a year, maybe 2 years, to yeshiva, or for women it's seminary, to learn more about Judaic studies. And you're really prime to make a decision to go right or left because you're 18 years old and you're like, okay, this religion's a big deal, and now you're going to school just to learn about your religion. And that's the next step of my journey. So that took me to Israel, to this confusing state of mind. And I'm going to continue this journey in the next video about what happens in the next state of my journey. Thank you so much for listening to part 1. I hope you appreciated it. Get ready for part 2.